So we moved here to Thailand in 2008, and we're teaching for Asia Biblical Theological Seminary. I teach the systematic theology classes. When we first moved out here, we had 3 kids, Nathan, Matthew, and Ellie. And while we were here, Kai was born as well. So we were here from 2000. He was born in 2010. 2008, we had the 3 kids. 2010, he came along. And Charlene was homeschooling all of them, even with a wee baby under just born. So she was really carrying a heavy load in our early days. So then we just continued to teach. I was teaching classes for ABTS. I would travel, go to a different country for a couple of weeks, teaching in person. And then the students would submit their work, and I would come back to Chiang Mai and grade it when they'd email it back to me. And we did that for quite a while. Our kids started aging out, graduating, going to college. Nathan went first, and then Matthew, and then Ellie. And so they are all back in the U.S. now. And Nathan is working, doing IT for a local school. And Matthew and his wife are working for a Christian radio station, and they're expecting a baby this month, our first grandchild. So we're excited about that. And then Ellie and her fiance are getting married in March. So we'll be coming back in time to catch their wedding in March. And Kai is 14, 9th grade, and he's still homeschooling with his mom, and I teach one of his classes, but Charlene's carrying the bulk of the education with Kai. With the school, things changed a little bit. With COVID, we went online, and after COVID, we kept some of our stuff online, and some of our classes are now hybrid. So instead of teaching the whole class in 2 weeks face-to-face, now I'm teaching over several weeks online, and then I fly to the teaching site, and I'm there for a week and teaching 4 hours a day for that week, and then come back to Chiang Mai, and then the students have the rest of the semester to finish up their work. And of course, I'm interacting with them over the internet, Zoom, discussion boards, all that kind of stuff. So that's what we're doing now. In the midst of that, I've also been working on my dissertation. I just submitted it, I guess on Monday. I just turned that in. I turned it in in August. I turned it into the review committee. They gave it back to me with some revisions that they wanted me to make. So I spent the rest of September making those revisions and finally submitted all that back on Monday. So now I've got a couple of weeks rest, I guess. I got to get ready for my defense. So I'll be doing that online. There'll be 3 people asking me questions over the internet, and I'll be responding to their questions and basically just explaining my dissertation to let them know I didn't make the whole thing up or copy it from somewhere that's actually my own material. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm definitely looking forward to being done with that. That's been just like a roller coaster ride. You turn in a chapter, and then the tension builds, and you get another chapter due, and then the terror kicks in, and it's been a cycle like that for about 4 years we've been working on it part-time, and so we'd be glad to be done with that. So I guess not really worrying, but demonstrated that what I was doing was something that would be helpful. Just getting all of that research in one place so that they can talk about it and try to come to some kind of consensus. Because I think that's one of the things that the church really needs here. It's a very young church, very small, growing church, but the seminaries and the books that are available are pretty limited. And so trying to come to some kind of an agreement among all the denominations on how do we talk about the Trinity, I think is very important. And it's something that, that's something that all Christians agree on. But what the Thai church doesn't have is agreed upon vocabulary. For, what do we agree are these are the words we're going to use, and this is what we mean by them. And so that's been really encouraging. A lot of really smart people in the Thai church, in the seminaries, the pastors, they know the Word of God. And so it's encouraging to talk to them and just to get their input, and that they're concerned about this kind of stuff. And so it was a good time. It was a good time just talking to them and just hearing their heart, and it also stretched my Thai. I had to have a lot of help with translation, especially the written resources I was looking at, getting those translated and trying to figure out, what vocabulary they were using and keeping that all straight. But it's been very rewarding to get it done and to feel like, this is something that I should be able to get published and it'll be useful to the Thai church. Yeah, I'll probably start out with the people that I interviewed for the project in the first place and just find out. A dissertation is a very different kind of literature. You just don't publish the dissertation and say, here you go, this is going to be helpful. You write a dissertation for a very select few people that you're trying to impress so that you get your degree. And then when you get done with that process, then you write something that everybody else will enjoy reading. And so I need to talk to the people that I interviewed and find out, what parts of the dissertation would be helpful, and then work from there. But I talked to a number of people that are either teaching in seminaries or they're involved in translation work. Not so much Bible translation, they have the scriptures translated, but translating other resources so that the Thais have access to a lot of the research that's been done. So talking to them and finding out what the best way forward would be for that's my next step. Publishers don't want to talk to you until you have actually been approved and you get your degree, because nobody wants to publish a failed dissertation. I think the biggest challenge that our students face is that in all the countries where we teach, except for the Philippines, and it's a slightly different minority there, but our students are all minorities. In other words, there aren't very many Christians where they are. And so they look weird to their neighbors and their coworkers. And so for them to try to explain, what they're doing, why they're going to school, it's a bit of a stretch for their coworkers to understand. The one exception was that I have a couple of students that teach in a Muslim school. They're both dentists, and I think I've written about them in one of my prayer letters in the past, but they both teach. It's a Muslim school in India, and so that's kind of an odd combination, because the Muslims and the Christians are both minorities in India, and they're both being attacked. And actually the Muslims are being attacked worse than the Christians are, at least at this point, by the Hindu majority. But those two are able to explain their faith to their Muslim coworkers, and they do get some kind of a resonance with them, because the Muslims, they appreciate people who study the Bible, who care about their religion, who actually study theology. I think that's very interesting to them. So that was one kind of an anomaly, where it's like a minority within a minority, but they're able to understand each other. But for the most part, our students are just surrounded by people that are, they're of a different faith. Either in Thailand, most people they know are Buddhists. In United Arab Emirates, they are mostly Muslim people around them, and so in India it's mostly Hindu. So trying to understand that, it's really difficult for Americans to kind of relate to that, to being a minority and to finding out just how strange. Just imagine if you were in America and you converted to, let's say you converted to become a Jehovah's Witness, and all of a sudden you don't celebrate any of the holidays that everybody else celebrates. Whether they actually believe in the holidays or not is irrelevant. It's just you don't participate in any of those celebrations. It's kind of like that for Christians here, because everybody else is celebrating different festivals, different holy days, and the Christians don't. And so they just look strange. And so I think that's probably the biggest I don't say biggest, but the constant oppressive resistance that they have just from their families who don't understand, why they're doing what they're doing. Like I was just talking to ABTS hired part-time somebody to help us with our IT, with our learning platforms, and he's in India. And his church they planted several daughter churches, and they just planted a new one. And they raised money to buy essentially part of a mall. It's about like a 12-story structure with commercial space and offices and all that mixed in together. But they bought 2 offices and they renovated them as a church building, a church meeting space. And the first Sunday that they had their grand opening, the building cut the power to their space and also turned off the elevators, which they're on the 6th floor. So, the young people could make it, but the elderly people who showed up, couldn't get up there. And so they had to find the people and negotiate with them and try to figure out, and explain to them, we're not really trying to take over your building. There's actually nobody else on this whole floor because the building is still being filled up. And so they went back and forth with that. And they finally, like 5 minutes before the service started, they got the power turned back on. And it's only because they're Christians. That's the only reason. And I think that kind of environment is difficult for Americans to understand. But that's the situation for most of our students, is that kind of pressure. Yeah, we have, it's a small enough room. Where I was meeting is a small enough room that, I could get pretty close to the students. And, we were 4 floors up, so it was just kind of like the bass, that you kept hearing, going on and on and on in the background. And you just get used to it. You go over it. But the key is, make sure you have Saturday morning classes, because Saturday morning it's dead quiet. There's like nobody up at Saturday morning. So the Saturday morning classes are great. And then Sunday afternoon is also pretty quiet. So that's helpful. That was at the one venue. The other venue that we were teaching in is actually, it's about a 6-story building. It's owned by a very wealthy Sikh family, the Sikh religion. And they are, again, another minority group in India that's been persecuted. And so they're also very friendly towards Christians. And so this Sikh family rents out their building, several floors of their building, to a local church. And so we don't have nearly as much competition there. So that was a much better place to teach. But it's an outstanding location for the church, to be meeting, to have a presence in that context. And then again, like I said, Sunday morning it's very quiet, so it's a great place for the church, to meet. So they have, actually in that building, they have 2 floors. So the first floor is where they have their worship is set up, and then the other floor is where they do Christian education, Sunday school, and that kind of thing. It's very, very unique how they're able to just make all kinds of different contexts work. It's pretty amazing what they do. If they're in the Thai culture, they're going to be coming out of Buddhism. If they're in India, they'll be coming out of Hinduism. I think either place, if you were a Hindu converting to Christianity in India, that would be a lot worse than converting from Buddhism to Christianity in Thailand. And the reason for that is there's more political pressure put on people who convert. And a lot of that has to do with their identity card. If they decide to go all the way and change their identity on their identity card, change their religion on their identity card, that will have implications for their employment. They can lose their job. Housing becomes unavailable. There's a lot of stuff that kicks into place when they do that. So that's pretty big. For the Thais, there's not any political pressure. There's no consequences as far as the government is concerned, except there's a lot of, it's kind of hard to imagine, but almost every business and certainly every government office is going to have some kind of a Buddhist shrine or a spirit house somewhere on their property. And those kinds of activities and festivities that they would celebrate in to bring, actually, to bring good luck, to bring blessing to the organization, to the business, to the government office, whatever, that would be something that would be more difficult for the Christian to participate in. And then there would be, there'd be a little bit of pushback, because you're not interested in us being blessed by the spirits or by Buddha, however they would word that. But the bigger problem is in your family relationships. All of a sudden, all the family events, getting married, a house being built, you get a new job, having a baby, any of those things where the monks and the spiritual forces would be involved in being called in to protect you, the Christians wouldn't be able to participate in that. They might show up to show their support for the family, but they wouldn't be able to participate in any of the ceremonies. And so then what happens is, if anything bad happens, if the house burns down or somebody loses their job or, the baby's born sick, then it's the Christian who's always to blame for all those things that happened because you didn't participate. So there's a lot of pressure that way. And it takes a while. I mean, eventually over time, the Thais that have been Christians for a while, their family comes to understand and accept, and it's a really tough start. So that's why the church is very important for these new believers, so that they have a community where they're accepted. It becomes a very important part of discipleship and helping new believers. In the Thai culture, you would be able to get people to show up for events. They don't have any trouble, showing to come up. Especially around Christmas time, they'll have big outreaches and invite people to come in and sing Christmas carols. They're very familiar with Christmas carols. They play them in the malls all the time. They never play them in Thai. They're always in English. But all the Christmas hymns, carols that you used to hear in the malls in America, but you don't hear them anymore. Now it's just Jingle Bell Rock and all that stuff. But they still play the old ones here in Thailand, but they won't play them with the lyrics translated. They just play them in English. So most people don't know what they're saying. But it's good stuff. But so Christians will invite and have them in. But in terms of converting, it's just as hard for, a Buddhist or an American or a Muslim to repent and acknowledge Jesus Christ as Lord. I mean, that's something the Spirit of God has to do. Culturally, I don't think any of the places are particularly easy for someone to convert, because they all have a lot of cultural family pressure to keep them from coming to their faith. I mean, we talk about pluralism in America, and being able to think your own thoughts and to make up your own decisions about what you believe. It's kind of just part of being an American. But in most of the other countries in the world, they have a dominant religion, and to become something other than that is pretty tough. I mean, even in Europe, where you've got Christianity as a state religion, I mean, actually becoming a real Christian and caring about your faith and going to church every Sunday and having it change your life, that's pretty weird. Because, in those countries, it's mostly atheism is the accepted norm. So it's, we're a minority just about everywhere we go. And at this point, one of the things is it's getting harder. We have 3 kids in the U.S. and we're a completely opposite time zone. We're 30 hours travel time to get back to the U.S. So that's harder. It's getting harder to feel that separation. Our parents are getting older. Charlene's mom and my parents, praise God, are still pretty healthy, but they're either in their 80s or almost 80. So, they're getting up there. So that's always a tug for us. We both have siblings that are doing a great job helping out with mom and dad. but you also feel kind of, I don't know what the word is. You just feel like you're kind of copping out on your responsibility to your parents, when you're this far away. And I think one of the other things that is changing for us, especially is for Kai, because he came along 8 years after our last child. He's kind of an only child now, and so trying to figure out how to get other friends for him to interact with. And he's involved in the youth group, and we've got a lot of kids in the youth group, but except for on Sundays and Saturdays, he's pretty much by himself, and so that's hard. I mean, he's doing well in school, but when you have other people that are going to school at the same time, like the other three kids had, it's a little bit easier than you're just the only one kind of slogging along. You're the teacher's pet, but you're also the teacher's target. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Yeah, there's a couple of things that have happened in Thailand. One was pretty much a man-made disaster. There was a dam in Myanmar across the border that failed, and all that water plus all the silt that had piled up behind the dam, which is a big problem with the dams here especially. The rivers flow in, and then the silt settles out of the water when it stops moving, and it fills up behind the dam, which is okay, but if you don't do maintenance and keep that cleaned out periodically, the dam failed, and there was a giant wall of mud that came through a major city up in northern Thailand. And the wall of water that went through certain parts of the city was probably 6 to 8 feet tall. And then it left behind just like anywhere that's low lying is just filled with mud now. It's a mess. And so we've had some people from our church that have gone up there and helped some of the missionaries that were up there clean their homes. But it's been really bad. And of course, Myanmar is not interested in doing anything to pay for any of this damage. It was their fault, but they're not going to do anything about it. So that's one thing that's happened. And then there's been extra rain up north, but Thailand is set up with a whole lot of mountains. And so what happens is you can have a lot of rain and a lot of flooding in one part, but it doesn't come down through the rest of the country. And so there's been flooding north of us and to the east of us, and then also to the south of us. But Chiang Mai, at least this year, Chiang Mai has been fairly dry. We've actually had not as much rain as we're supposed to have. So personally, the flooding hasn't been that bad. The river going through our town, there's a major river that goes through Chiang Mai, and that's flooded. It left its banks, but that's fairly typical. I mean, it almost does that every year. And the people that live there, they just learn to deal with it. But this weekend, there's a missionary family that lives right next to the river, and their house got flooded. So our church will be going over there to help them clean up and scrub down the walls and mop the mud out of the house. So fortunately, most buildings here are made out of concrete, and you have tile for your flooring, which is not terribly comfortable, but it's a lot easier to clean the mud out of than if you have carpet. Like I said, there's where we live up in northern Thailand, there's a lot of mountains. So there's a lot of beautiful places that you can go. There's resorts that we like to go to that are quite cheap. But there's still joy doing that, going to different places to stay just for a weekend or a couple of days just to get away. So that's nice. But also with the mountains and in rainy season right now, we've got a lot of waterfalls as well. So there's some really beautiful places that you can go. Some places are national parks. You can drive right up to them. Some places you have to do some hiking to get back to them. But it's a lot of fun doing that kind of stuff. So those are the kind of things that we enjoy doing, just getting out in nature and looking at, just the beauty that God has made and that we can enjoy here. So that's nice. Going out to eat is a lot cheaper here than it is in America. We can go out to eat quite cheaply here. And if you get Thai food, I can get a nice bowl of cow soy for like $2. So that's nice. There in America, you probably pay $15 for the same thing, and it wouldn't be as good. Yeah. There's a lot of fruit here that we can't get in America. They make fruit so that you can ship it, and that's why people complain. You get these hard strawberries that aren't that good, but they're able to ship them from California, Peru, Mexico, wherever. But they have a lot of fruit here in Thailand that hasn't been made shippable. So you won't see it in America, but we can get it here, and it comes in seasons, and so there's. Mangoes are going to be coming in. Mangoes are going to be super cheap. Usually mangoes are about around this time of the year. They come in around to do the math, but about $1 a pound for good Thai mangoes. They're nothing like the Mexican mangoes, and I think actually I've seen some of them. They're very close to the Thai mangoes. They have them at Sam's Club, but they're the really yellow ones. They're usually about this big, which is about a third of the size they are here, but they're pretty good. But the Thai mangoes are really, really outstanding. They're just so soft and juicy and sweet, and so that's one of my favorites. Durian is another one. My kids and my wife, they hate it, but I really like it. I can't really explain it to you. It's just it smells really bad, but it tastes really good. You can look up plenty of videos about durian. There's lots of them where cats will take it and bury it and whatnot. It's just it's just bad stuff. But I really like that one. But there's a lot of other fruits. There's mangosteen. You might have heard about that. They do weird stuff with it for health benefits. But I just like the fruit inside. It's really good. Super white. And you open it's a very purple shell, and you open that up and you just pop the whole thing in your mouth, and it's just like an explosion of juice and flavor and sweetness. It's really, really good. Bananas, they have bananas coming out their ears here right now, and will have for many years to come. So the bananas are quite cheap. They're very different from the ones in America. They have a very different taste. I prefer them. My wife likes the American ones, but the ones here are they have a really I can't describe it, but it's it actually has taste as opposed to just kind of a mushy thing in your mouth, what they have in America. So we enjoy that. I mentioned the cow soy. That's one of our favorite soups, and that's just coconut milk and like a red or a yellow curry. They mix that together. They have noodles that they put in with that and some chicken, depending on what kind of meat you want to get in it. And then they have cabbage and onions that they put in with that. And then also you squeeze a lime over the whole thing. It's really good. I just had that today, so I'm just thinking about it, but it's one of our favorite. It's a northern Thai dish. It's harder to find outside of Thailand. Some of the places will have it. I think my kids in Xenia, Ohio, have found a Thai restaurant that actually has it. But it's like $15 a bowl, so they don't get it very often. But yeah, so that's some of our favorite foods. Well, I mean, obviously we'd love to come back for the grandchild's birth, but it's a lot of money, and the older we get, the longer it takes us to get over those flights. So we don't do them. We don't do them just for any reason. And because Ellie is getting married in March, it's a little bit hard to come home in October for the birth and then still be there in March for Ellie's wedding. So we'll be coming home in time for her wedding, and we'll see the grandbaby. But we'll also make sure that Matthew Zooms with us quite a bit, because the babies they just grow up so fast. Matthew has no idea. When we told him we were disappointed that the baby was going to come in October and we couldn't come home until March, he's like, "Well, that's only 4 or 5 months." And we're like, yeah, 4 or 5 months is a long time for a baby. But anyways, yeah, that does make it harder. But we are planning to come home for a couple of months at least, just for Ellie's wedding. And so looking forward to that. We're still working on that. There's another couple that we work with at that school, and the couple he's an American and his wife is Thai, and they're both wonderful Christian people, and she is the major liaison with the school because she speaks Thai, so it's a lot easier to communicate with the leadership at the school. And they just got back to Thailand. We just saw them on Sunday, so it was their first Sunday back. So we're looking forward to finding out what's going on. There's a lot of turmoil right now. So they got the war in Myanmar. There's a lot of refugees trying to come into Thailand, and the Thai government is trying to push them back. And they have different ways of doing that. And usually the way they do it is just round people up and just bus them back. And so when they start doing stuff like that, all the refugees start getting real nervous and scarce. They don't show up in public places. And so this kind of endeavor that the school is trying to do is complicated by that, because it's harder for them to get legal permission to be here. So they're either in a tough spot where they can't get the paperwork they need to stay here legally, or they're here legally, but they're nervous. And so we have to talk to the people at the school to find out what's going on and where they are right now with their students. Some of them Charlene stays in touch with on Facebook. They've changed their names and they don't put their photo up, but they talk to her still, and she knows who they are. But it's increasingly awkward, unfortunately. I mean, it's just these people are in a terrible, terrible tug of war, whatever you want to call it, push me, pull you, where the Thais don't want them and they don't want to be in Burma. The Burmese don't want them in Burma either. They want them out or dead. And so it's really just, it's a horrific situation. And I don't know the solution. The Chinese government is propping up the military in Burma because they would much rather deal with one dictator than 8 independent nations. So they're definitely on the side of the military junta, which doesn't make life easy for anybody. Not that the people who are fighting against the Burmese government are good guys either. They're horrible people, a lot of them. And so it's like there's no, I mean, you think about the U.S. election, like we don't know who to vote for. Like these are all bad operators in Myanmar. I mean, the people, just the common people, are just really just getting torn up. It's really sad. No, I'm pretty sure they're probably trying to keep a low profile. They don't want to raise any ire from either side. Worst case scenario, there's a number of Thai companies that are buying oil from Myanmar, and of course that funds the military, the current government. So that part of it is kind of ugly. We have that issue as well. You've got different companies that are providing oil to Russia, and those contracts have been signed 20 years ago, and they've got all kinds of millions of dollars of infrastructure in place. So I don't know how to work that out, but I just know that there are people that have financial interest in keeping things, relatively stable, which is very unsavory, but that's the world. Yeah, so for us personally here in Chiang Mai, we're part of an international church, and like we were talking at the beginning, we have a lot of families that are volunteering to help out with different kinds of ministries, And it's just been real local church. There's been a lot of people that have gotten kicked out of China, and they've come to Chiang Mai. They're still working with Chinese people, but they're also here in Chiang Mai now because they can't go back to China. So there's a couple of things that happens with that. One, we get some really gifted people that are participating in our church now. So we have a couple of people that are working on running the Sunday school program. I think, we have close to 80, probably about 80 children who are aged, 2 years old up to 5th grade. And so trying to trying to staff a Sunday school program for that it's a major undertaking. And we just got some really gifted people that just come within the last year that have really taken that bull by the horns and are doing a great job. And then for me personally, I've been leading what they do is they have youth meet on Sunday, every other Sunday, and then the staggering Saturdays, they also have what they call Deeper. And so they meet in homes. The senior high meets in one home, the junior high meets in another home. And that's really been encouraging for me, just to spend time with those kids. They're relatively young, they're 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. But they're really smart. And it's been a lot of fun just talking to them and asking them questions and getting them to think. So that part of it personally has been very rewarding. Kai he's in the senior high, so he's there. He was in the junior high when I was helping out with the junior high, so that was, it was good and not so good for him, because Dad was there. So now he's in the senior high, so he's, low man on the totem pole. He's 9th grade, so he's working his way up. He still feels, on the outside, but it's a good group of kids that he's working with. So that's our family. As far as ministry goes, I've got a class that's going to be starting up. Interesting. I do my defense of my dissertation is going to be at 10 o'clock at night, my time, online on October 21st. But that's also the first day of my class. So I'm going to teach from 7 p.m. till 9 p.m. and then at 10 p.m. is when I'm going to do my dissertation defense. So that's going to be a busy day. But I'm really looking forward to getting back into the classroom. I'm already starting to interact with some of the students. It's a city in the Philippines that we haven't taught in for a long time because the numbers dried up. But they've got a cohort together. They've got, I think, 13 to 15 students. They're all graduates from the Bible college there. They're pastoring in local churches down there. So I'm really looking forward to getting back into the classroom, interacting with the students. Our dean has restricted my schedule gratefully. So I haven't been able to teach as much because I've been working on my research and writing and all of that. I taught 2 classes last year, and this year I'll be teaching this class coming up in October, and then my schedule picks up after that. But this is my first time back since last November. So I'm really looking forward to being back with the class and in the classroom with the guys and talking ministry and theology. It's really looking forward to doing that. One of the things that comes up a lot, especially in the Philippines, India not so much, because India is relatively, the church is not young, but a lot of the people that we're working with, because we're in the city, a lot of the churches are young. They've just been planted. They got a lot of young people in them. The leadership is all young, brand new. So that's not as much a problem in India. In the Philippines, where I'll be going to teach next, the question that comes up a lot is we have the younger students, they're learning new things, they want to try new things, but the leadership in the church is all older. And part of the reason for that is that they don't have any kind of retirement plan at all in the churches. And so what happens is these guys, they get into their 70s and their 80s, but they don't have an option. I mean, they live in the church, or they live in the church provided housing, and there's no place for them to go. There's no plan for them. And so the younger guys just have to wait really until the pastor dies, until they can actually, move up and try new things, because the older guys are usually fairly resistant to change, which is, it's understandable, but it's just it's a bad system that they have set up, and that's been a problem for ever since I've been teaching in the Philippines. So I always tell my students, first of all, you need to have a plan to retire, have some kind of a fund set up so that you don't have to stay in the church and try to preach every Sunday, which these guys are trying to do. They're trying to preach every Sunday. They don't have the energy and the stamina for that kind of workload anymore. But I said, you need to plan so that when you get to that age, you're not repeating the cycle. Now, maybe it'll take 30 years to get the cycle changed, but you need to start thinking about it now. And I think that's one of the biggest things that comes up a lot from a lot of the students that we have, because they're younger now. It used to be, when I first started teaching for ABTS, I think in the Philippines I still had mostly younger students, but I still had a few older ones that were still taking classes. But that's just been a problem for a long time. Now, all of our students are younger. They're their 20s, 30s typically. Most of them have finished Bible college. They've been in ministry for a little while, and now they're working on their master's degree. I think personally for us, we're just, we're in our 50s, and just starting to feel our age a little bit more, trying to figure out what's the best way to take care of ourselves, trying to get medical care is pretty good here, but it's it's set up for Thai people, and they don't have the same health issues that we have, and the doctors don't handle things the same way we're used to doctors handling them in the US. So we're starting to feel that a little bit more. So just wisdom and how to take care of ourselves and how to seek medical care for the issues that we have. Obviously, we want to pray for the safe arrival of our grandchild. That'd be wonderful. To have that be a problem-free delivery for new parents. And Ellie and her fiance, they're getting married, so they've got a lot of stuff that they're working through right now, and I think they're doing fine, but it's just a phase for them that they got to work through stuff, and just bringing two lives together, where they've been kind of independent. Ellie's got a job, he's got a job, and trying to bring those two things together, just at a very basic level. That's probably something that we should be praying about. Yeah, and I think for me, just professionally, just trying to figure out how to teach effectively online. It's a steep learning curve for everybody. They've been doing online education for about 10 years now, and people are still trying to figure out, what's the best way to make happen online what happens in the classroom. And just trying to decide, there's some stuff that, you just have to let go of. And, for somebody like me, I don't want to let go of anything. And so it's hard for me to change. And so just wisdom to pay attention to my own strengths and weaknesses, what works with the students and what doesn't, and just being willing, maybe to let, I had this favorite project or lecture or illustration or whatever, dozens of those things are coming up as I teach, and some of them I just have to let go. They just don't work anymore. And so just wisdom to know, how to do that, and, ride a new horse, so to speak. So that's probably the biggest thing for me. That's I'm just up against that day in and day out, just all the new requirements. Yeah, I just, to the church, I would obviously want to say thank you for your support, for your prayers. The church is growing here. There are young people that have a lot of energy and a lot of ideas, and they're really doing great work in Thailand, in the Philippines, in India. They're really amazing people, and they're up against a lot of different obstacles, but they're really doing great work, and they're brilliant people, and it's just a real privilege to teach them and work with them. God doesn't have a lot of people. But the people that he has, he's really gifted, and it's exciting to work with them. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but there was a book that came out, and I contributed a chapter, and a couple other people at our school contributed chapters to it. And the main focus of the book is, we all do our little parts, and it doesn't seem like we're very powerful, or we're very strong, or very smart. We're not the amazing people that you hear about. But what's so neat about it is that because of the way he does it, then the glory goes to him. And so that's really what I'm excited about, is just knowing that the amazing things that happen, it's not because of, I can't point to, I did that, that's not going to happen. But knowing that God is able to use just hundreds and hundreds of people that are doing their faithful day in and day out to accomplish his purposes and build his church. And it's very exciting to be a part of that.